I'm walking to Penshurst in Kent, famous for its alleged association with Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn's romance. And this is a traditional scene in Kent, an old oast house used for drying out all the hops. I'm going there today, a bit unexpectedly, to see if the brass of Anne Boleyn's brother has partially been stolen from the parish church. While researching the burials of Anne Boleyn's baby brothers, I found these 2 pages on the internet with pictures of the memorial brass of little Thomas Boleyn Jr. in Penshurst. As you can see, part of the brass is now missing. Both of the brasses originally were of crosses on steps, but the one in Hever has now been replaced completely, so you can't see the steps. It's just like a triangular base at the bottom. But Thomas Boleyn's brass in Penshurst shows us what both of them would have looked like. The base still survives, the top cross has been replaced too, but has it been stolen? There's a little Tudor-esque house on the way. I'm hoping that maybe it came loose and has been put somewhere safe. I'm hoping to find it back in place when I get to the church. What are we going to find when we get there? I really wasn't planning on doing this today, but I was coming through Tunbridge and just thought, you know, why not? It's a bit of a walk from Penshurst train station to Penshurst Place in the church. It's 1.7 miles. There's a wooded area over there. Very nice view for those people in the houses to look over this little field here. It's funny to think that much of the country would have been wooded at one point like this. Here's the woods, and Henry VIII must have come hunting in places like this with his court, the men of his court and everyone. Now, Penshurst Place was owned by Edward Stafford, the Duke of Buckingham, but he was executed in 1521. And when he was executed, all of his lands became crown property. They were forfeited to the crown, and so Henry VIII owned them. And isn't that lovely how the sun is just shining through the canopy of the trees just down onto the ground there? We know that Henry VIII stayed in Penshurst Place in 1519 with Edward Stafford, the Duke of Buckingham, so would have come through these woods, presumably, perhaps, hunting and doing those kind of things. There's more of the trees there. You just wonder if Henry VIII could have come through this very area while he was staying at Penshurst Place. The year after the Duke of Buckingham was executed, Henry VIII made Anne Boleyn's father, Thomas Boleyn, the keeper of Penshurst Place. Right, there is 1.2 miles to go, and we're going up here. And there's no footway for 1 mile. Oh, that's sunny. There's so many cars. Trying to record a video and all this traffic. How problematic. Oh. Because I wasn't planning on coming here today, I didn't even research how far away Penshurst Place and the church was from Penshurst Station. It's 1.7 miles, which is a bit like Hever, where Hever train station is quite a walk from the castle and the church there. But it's actually lovely being out in this lovely weather, walking through quite quiet areas with cars and more cars and more cars. Anyway, but it's still nice doing a little, more cars. It's still nice though being out and about in the countryside, seeing all the trees and just enjoying like this autumn day. What's challenging if you're researching the Boleyns or interested in the Boleyns is that there's so much information we don't know that writers, especially historic fiction writers, have had to invent things to fill the gaps. When I say invent, I do mean invent. We know very little, for example, about the feelings of Anne Boleyn's parents to what was happening to their children, their fallout with their third surviving child, Mary. We just don't know. So people have invented quite a lot about them, Claire Ridgway of the Anne Boleyn Files has been doing quite a lot to combat that though, which is interesting. Claire Ridgway has a website, the Anne Boleyn Files, the link's below. And she also has a YouTube channel for the Anne Boleyn Files and the Tudor Society. And there's a link below to one of her videos on Thomas and Elizabeth Boleyn. Someone who's also been trying to change the public perception of Thomas Boleyn is Lauren Mackay. This is her website. And she has also written a book about Thomas and George Boleyn called Among the Wolves at Court. There's a great conversation with her on the British History YouTube channel. And I'll put a link in that below where she talks about her research and beliefs about what the Boleyn family were really like. A lot of what we also thought we knew about the Boleyns is being re-established with more research. For example, look at the Holbein sketch which said Ormond on it, which in loads of books is taken as a likeness of Anne Boleyn's father and is now thought to be of James Butler, the other Earl of Ormond. I think it's Ormond actually. So that's different. Also, the big painting that used to be called Lady Jane Grey, which is now known to be of Henry VIII's sixth wife, Catherine Parr. So we always have to revisit and re-establish things. This is another nice house in Tudor style. I was reading an interesting article recently about how even the miniature of Catherine Howard is also possibly thought to be Anne of Cleves, and also how one of the Holbein sketches, which is said to be Anne Boleyn and has Anne Boleyn on it, is actually thought to be, by one person, Jane Seymour, which actually is quite convincing to me. But that's what makes the Tudor era so interesting to me and so fascinating to many others, in that there's so much to study, to talk about, to discuss, to have opinions on, to maybe change our opinions on, to maybe defend these dead people, to talk about their lives. It's just such a colourful but yet brutal period of history. Another Tudor style house there. More Tudor style buildings over here. Penshurst Park Cricket Club looking for new adult and junior players if anyone's good at cricket. This is another lovely old house. It looks quite old, this one, doesn't it? It's actually near Penshurst Place, which is only 400 yards away. Oh, and look! Look what's in the distance over there. That's the church. And just in view now too, with the church on the right, on the left, there is Penshurst Place. Do you know what? It's pretty exciting. I've just got to come down off the road now. It's quite challenging. Hang on. Let me cross over now. There is nothing like walking to a place. You just feel like there's a little achievement or something, and you gradually get the experience of the surroundings and what's going on. And then look there, Penshurst Place. Wow, I'm here. There's a sign here that says the Moat. Why does it say the Moat? Is that the name of a place? Because there's not going to be a moat down there, is there? All right, here we are. I'm just coming into the village now of Penshurst. Penshurst Place is to my left. And if you just see right ahead of me, the sign for Penshurst. And just over the top of the hedge, we can see the tower of Penshurst Church. We're here. There's a tea house here. There's a bus stop here. Here is the village hall. There's a Union flag that's not flapping at all because there's not much wind. There's some art in this cottage window. This was a grocer draper, Buxton House Stores, and a provision merchant, whatever that was. And here's the village pub, the Leicester Arms. And next to the pub are these really old looking cottages. The old low doors of these cottages here. These look like these really could be Tudor, you know. You can get some seeds and plants from here. That's really lovely, Penshurst hollyhocks. But we're here to visit the church. And I can see it's just up here, but I'm not sure if this is the way in. No, that's a private driveway. Let's go back. I have checked previously the opening times for the church, so it should be open. But are we going to find the brass of little Thomas Boleyn in the church? And underneath this house is the entrance to the church. Look at these really old wood supporting beams here. Wonder how old they are. And here is the church. So we know that the Boleyns will have walked up some church path, not this modern one, to get to the church. There's some old gravestones here. There is the church porch, and there is the tower that we saw in the distance. Outside the porch is this stone table here, which looks a bit like a tomb, but it actually isn't a tomb. It's actually a medieval dole table, where a small portion of food, clothing or money that was placed on the table for the poor on special occasions such as St Thomas's Day, the 21st of December. It's one of only a few that still survive in churchyards today. Let's go in. Are we going to find all the brasses here or not? If you've followed any of my other church videos, you will know one of the first things I look at when I come into a church are not the stained glass windows, not all around me at the monuments, but the floor. And the reason I do that is to see if all the old floor stones have been removed. And the interesting thing about Penshurst is if we walk down the aisle here, is there is a very old tomb slab here which was not removed. There may be something in the church guidebook about it, the modern way of church donation. But I'm just looking around first. Let's have a look at this floor stone. This would originally have had a memorial brass in it, like the little brass of Thomas Boleyn, but we can see originally there were once 3 figures here. Now, I'm assuming possibly that this was originally a man in the middle with 2 wives. Could it have been? There's a lost monumental inscription here. There was a shield at the top once. And at the bottom here, there and there, that looks like children. There would have been children there, but it's been filled in. So to stop the dents, they've filled this in to make it smoother. So what I'm assuming from this is that there was a man here and his first wife. And with his first wife, they had children. But with the second wife, they didn't have any children because there are none there. And maybe we can find out who that is in a future video. There is another worn old stone here. I can't see that has any worn brass or inscription on it at all. Let's go up into the chancel or the sanctuary. Oh, there's some more old stones. Look on the floor there. And I've just got a bit excited because I can just see the little monumental brass there of Thomas Boleyn in the distance. And as we come into the Sydney Chapel, I can instantly see what I really didn't want to see. Because look. Oh, goodness me, here is the little grave of Thomas Boleyn, but look, this bit is missing. It's missing. Regrettably, it's looking to me like the original bit of the brass of little Thomas Boleyn has been stolen. This is where the steps were that went up here. It's crumbled quite a lot. It was here. This is crumbling a bit too. In here. Oh dear, this is quite sad, isn't it? This isn't actually what I thought was going to happen. I thought I might have come here and then it was going to have been back in place. It was going to be there again. So where is it? Where is the portion of the brass of little Thomas Boleyn? The steps that held up the original cross? We can see there in the inscription here, Thomas Boleyn, spelled B-W-L-L-A-Y-E-N, the son
of Sir Thomas Boleyn. And we know from what Alison Weir said that this inscription must date to 1509 or afterwards, because Thomas Boleyn was only made a Sir in 1509. There's the replaced cross here, but what is very odd is that the original indent, this cross doesn't even look like it was properly straight, does it? Which is really weird. Why would the person who carved the stone not have carved a cross? Was the original cross wonky? Was the original brass cross a bit wonky and then the stonemason had to fit it in? I've not looked at the guidebook yet, but there is this about the Sidney Chapel, which says it was designed by architect J. and Rebecca in 1822, when also working at Penshurst Place. It lists the tombs in here, which are the tomb of Sir William Sidney from 1554, effigy of Sir Stephen de Penchester from 1299, Robert Sidney 1702, brass to Thomas Yden 1518, Thomas Boleyn's cross, and then Philip, John and Jocelyn Sidney from the 18th century. You can see this very colourful and decorative ceiling of this chapel here, coming down to all the tombs below. And there's some more monumental brasses here. Now, what was immediately apparent to me, though, when I saw some pictures of this, is that Thomas Boleyn's tomb is round the wrong way. If we look at the tomb next to it, the inscription runs this way. If we walk over to Thomas Boleyn's tomb, we can see that his inscription is actually up the other way. Let me take you to before the altar to have a talk about this. So, behind me is the altar. In front of me is the choir where those graves are that we looked at earlier. And we know that right now, the grave of the man we looked at the beginning, he is facing me. His inscription is at the bottom. Now, if we look at churches, usually the main doors of the church were to the west, which is over there. Behind me is the altar, and that was to the east. This is the altar currently in Penshurst Church. The north of the church is over there. And the south of the church is over there. So the Sidney Chapel is basically sort of like the south chancel. The person buried below me here, Mills Smith, will have his head at that end and his feet down here where my feet are. That is so that when the day of the resurrection comes, his feet will be here, his head will be here, and he will rise up this way. And everybody in the church would rise up in the same direction. They would rise to face the east, which is where the altar is. Now, if we come back into the Sidney Chapel, we can see that Thomas Boleyn's tomb is facing in the wrong direction. He would be raising up towards that way, whereas actually he should be raising to the east, which is over there, because the altar is over there too. So it's immediately clear to me that the tomb has been moved, and as we know that this chapel was restored or developed or whatever they did in it, I can bet that some of the graves were moved, and it's probable that they were moved at other times as well, because tomb slabs were often moved around in churches when a more important person came to be buried in a top spot, or when one of the monumental brasses was completely worn away and they decided to replace it with a stone that you could actually see with an inscription on. So it's been moved. There's this tomb in the Sidney Chapel here. There are these brasses over here. I therefore think a lot of these tombs are going to have been moved from somewhere else. This is a very interesting brass, this one. Very old, isn't it? Husband and wife here. They just had one daughter at the bottom. You can see her there praying with her headdress on. We can read this here. What is it? Of ye charity, pray for the souls of... Can't see what that is. Is that Pawle? No. Pawle Agnes Yden? Is it? gentleman, the son of Thomas Eden. I can't read what that says. What does that say? And Agnes, his wife. Ye which Pawle, deceased the... Goodness, what is that the 3rd day of August in the year of our Lord? Don't know what that bit is there. Not quite sure what this date is. On whose souls... Is it something have mercy, amen? All the brass is here for this one, which is interesting. Next door to this one is another brass of another child here. Oh, Bridget and Alice, daughters of Robert Sidney. Died 1599. Oh, both died in the same year, 1599. So these children are there, and little Thomas is just over here. The very old table tomb here with brass inscription and coats of arms there. A couple of more modern memorials still done in that brass look, but from the 20th century there. This is another tomb here to Thomas Sidney, is it? Or their father? Who is this to? Let me just say. To the memory of... Oh, this is Philip Sidney, yeah. The 5th Earl of Leicester. Oh, that's why the pub's called the Leicester Arms, I see now. I'm going to leave the Sidney Chapel and Penshurst Church now. I have got the guidebook that I will read to find out more about the restorations and the removal and moval of all these monuments and tombs here, and see if we can find out where exactly was little Thomas Boleyn buried. Because I don't think he would originally have been buried in the Sidney Chapel. I think he was buried somewhere else. And that's what happens when you start digging, isn't it? You find all these mysteries that need resolving. But what on earth has happened to that bit of the memorial brass of Anne Boleyn's little brother, Thomas Boleyn? Has it been stolen? Is it being kept safe somewhere? What can we find out?
You can continue the story with the next episode unedited, or continue finding out more with the edited episode. Or what about watching this new family history story? Click here to subscribe to the channel to find out all about future episodes. Thanks for watching.